Hello, my little goblins. We're back at it again, and this time we are playing a deck for the people. This is a free-to-play, insanely free-to-play, super cheap. If your account is, pretend you messed up your account and you bought the wrong shit, your deck sucks, and blah, 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 or you're making a brand new account. This deck is so insanely cheap, it's not even funny. Is it competitive? Well, we're about to see, but I'm going to tell you right now ahead of time, it is competitive. It's actually pretty darn good, and the only reason I wanted to try this out is because when I was playing in Masters, like high Masters, I played against True Draco a few times, and I was like, there's no way you could actually like win a decent amount of games with this deck. But you'd be surprised. We're playing obviously a few floodgates, and I know what you guys are going to say. Ugh, floodgates, so cringe. But I think this is probably the least cringe floodgate deck there is. I'd rather play against True Draco than like decks like Dynamorphia or Labyrinth or Runic Stun. Like I'd rather 100% play against True Draco than that, because the games are at least more interactive. But we're gonna actually go into some matches. You guys are gonna see what I'm talking about, how the deck performs still in the current meta. And like I said, the rank system just reset. This is when I'm recording this. It's July 2nd. So it just reset. So most of the people who were in Masters or in Diamond, and these games are going to take place obviously in Diamond. Can a 60 UR deck, because this is obviously you can get one in the Master Pack, compete well in today's current climate where most decks are like 1,000+ UR dust? Hello, we're here with game number 1. Our opening hand is kind of strange. It's not the greatest, to be honest. You usually just want to open a lot more traps than this, but it's not the end of the world. We open Solemn with Monarch's Erupt, and that'll do it sometimes. We're playing against Thumbed. And I'm purposely not using sleeves or a deck box or a thing just to show how poor this deck is. This is a poor man's deck. And honestly, I've seen some people play without Solemn, so you can make this a 0 UR deck if you really wanted to. We're going to counter this Merly with this Monarch's Erupt. You know what the great thing too about this deck is? Like, one of the annoying things is like the bestials like kind of go over your cards pretty easily, so this is definitely something to like watch out for. But D-Fissure, so D-Fissure is huge. Even though my hand kind of sucks ass right now, D-Fissure is pretty much going to make it so my opponent is going to start getting starved for resources, and it's going to start making their bestial draws like complete dead draws, which is nice. So we draw another D-Fissure. I'm going to tribute it. Again, we're kind of getting cooked right now, but it's really not the end of the world. We're just keeping Monarch's Erupt active, because if you don't have a tributed monster by the end of the turn, it does get destroyed, so it can start doing stuff again. And it looks like it's going to get destroyed. He goes into Zeaman, goes into Foxy Tune. And I was actually kind of shocked he did this play, because I thought he would just go for a Synchro Climb play, but I had Solemn Judgment, so I wasn't super afraid of it. But he ends up going into Sprite Sprint, which doesn't work because everything's just getting banished. I'm like, okay, well, Paw Desire's insane top deck. We have a lot of draw cards though, and we got our best trap out, our best monster out of the deck. Now we're just gonna annihilate our opponent. Now this is where you start getting incremental advantages. He's gonna activate Snow. I am not gonna Solemn this. No point. I have another one in my hand. He activates Grasslook Screener, which banishes pretty much everything, which is hilarious to me. I'm going to use this just to protect my life points, because my life points are getting really low. But there is a... I think I probably should just took it. I probably should just like took the 24 and then activate this, resurrect, and then activate this again to tribute, and then use it to pop this. That way I have 2 beaters on the field. I think that probably was the right choice. But if I did that, I wouldn't have skill. I wouldn't be able to activate the skill drain, which it might not even be that crazy. But it does actually help here. We flip up Skill Drain, and Nimble Beaver is not going to go the distance. But yeah, I know you might be saying, floodgates, 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 but it was still pretty interactive. And like I said, this deck is stupid cheap, so it is great for new accounts. Alrighty, we're here with game number 2 in our opener. This is pretty much the best opener you can open with this deck. So the reason why it's such a good opener is you pretty much just search for the spell, like the spell. So now you can use the spells effect to get this tribute off. You normal summon Dinah, call card Demise, and then the only way this would have been better if this one of these cards was Solemn Judgment. Like if I had Solemn Judgment as this last card. He plays Dark Ruler, which you would think, oh, Dark Ruler is going to fuck you over. It's like, well, we have Monarchs Erupt, so he just loses. Yep. This is a free win. I know this is like kind of a lame max to show, but it just shows you how many free wins you get with this deck, because decks cannot play through Defissure, and they also can't play through a one-sided skill drain. Hello, we're here with game number 3, and we're going second, so... This deck is definitely a lot weaker going second. So this deck is like, I'm going to try and explain it. Going first is a free win. Going second is a maybe win. It's definitely a lot harder to win going second. I'm going to say that. So you kind of have to just get lucky with a lot of your coin flips. It's a good thing my opponent's playing shitty cards like this. They are playing Labyrinth though, which is a pretty good grind deck, but we're also grinding. Defissure is not the greatest here. I think these cards are way better. But there's an argument to just pop the Skill Drain. Actually, I probably should have just popped Skill Drain. So I'm going to activate Pod Duality. I see my big boy here. So now we can use Diagram to pop the Fossil Dinah. And this is why this deck is really good at grinding any archetype out. Your opponent's playing monsters, you can pop with traps. Your opponent's playing back row, you just keep getting these spells with Ignis and stuff, and you just keep popping all their back row, and you get so much value out of it. And it's like, okay, boom, and our opponent concedes. This deck, I'm telling you, free wins, dude. Free wins, guys. Alright, this is game number 4. We're only going to do 5 games for this because the games are pretty quick for the most part. Like, if we win like, in the first, like, we win very fast. I only had, like, 1 or 2 games that were, like, kind of extended. But we're going to activate Pod Desires. We draw here. 21 cards in the deck. We set the Fossil Dinah because it really does nothing playing an attack. He's gonna act, so he activates this to stop Fossil Dinah, I'm assuming. And he attacks me. It's actually hilarious though. I'm gonna actually use two Pot of Desires because I'm a hero. We find the Ignis off the top. We're really looking for the Draco Fighter though. So we hit Draco Fighter, which is all we wanted to hit. We're gonna start popping some shit. Pop goes the Weasel. We're gonna draw a card here. Pop. Pop another card. Things are working great. He activates Rexstrum, which will make all my monsters go down to 1,000 attack, right? And then I just flip Monarchs Erupt, which now I can kill here. This is the whole thing I was planning for. I just wanted to set this up so I can kill. And it's pretty much GG. He just gives up because he knows I had the kill on board. Alrighty, we're here with the last game against Chef Branded. And yeah, if you want to see a Branded tier limit deck just suffer, I mean, you're about to see it right now. He activates Albion. He sends Branded Regain. I get to trigger my card. He activates Havness. And I'm like, okay, Soul Drain, have fun. Game's over. If you guys don't know, Soul Drain just shuts down tier limits completely. Like, look, he mills all these cards, can't activate any effects. Like, his whole deck's just shut off. He's gonna have, like, no way. The only way you can confuse is, like, with Branded Fusion. And I have Solemn for it. Yep. Everything's getting banished. So here I activate Apocalypse to tribute this. And the reason why is because I'm thinking he can Fusion Deployment go into Aliber and then possibly fuse these off. But the more I think about it, there's like probably no shot he could ever go into Aliber here, because not Aliber, sorry, Albaz, because I don't think there's a card he can like go into, because I don't think this isn't 2500 attack. So yeah, I think I probably should have just not done this. But I did this because I thought he was going to go into Albaz, but I actually don't think he could have gone into anything with Albaz. So he ends up going to Cartesia. He's going to activate Cartesia's effect. I'm like, okay, thanks young blood. I'm going to get a free search for another Apocalypse. And he fuses off Havness. I don't know if he thought Havness's effect would activate Soul Drain, buddy. I don't know. He sends a Baldrake there. He activates Aliber. Again, I am not activating Judgment for anything besides Fusion. And here we go. Here's the Drew Worm. So you might be asking yourselves, well, why didn't he attack? Well, because I have Apocalypse down. And Apocalypse is a permanent attack drop. If you guys have never played True Draco before. Right? So now I know he grabbed Branded Beast to stop Soul Drain. I'm literally just going to use Solemn for that. I just saw him, the Branded Beast, and we win. And now that we have this, I don't think you guys realize how broken this is. Now that I have this, I'm going to be able to search a spell, a trap, and a monster. If my opponent starts doing anything on his turn. Or my turn. It's so much advantage, he's not going to be able to play through it. And as long as I have Apocalypse out, I can fight any monster. And he just concedes because he knows it's too much advantage I'm going to be generating right here. So, GG, we're going to go to the recap and talk about how the deck did and what I think you could replace for even more budget options. Hello, welcome to the recap. If you guys enjoy this video, please like and comment down below what you want to see next. And also subscribe to the channel because I come up with videos very often. I normally do not do trap decks, like a lot of stun decks, because I know you guys get triggered by them. But I do think it's good to show that there are cheap decks out there, especially when Konami has been pretty much solely putting out the most expensive decks that you possibly can afford. Like, it costs so much money if you're starting a new account, if you want to build like something like Heroes or Branded. So this is a good option, especially for new accounts, especially for you to grind up the gems, because you don't have to waste your URs. You can just save up your URs on the new account and still grind out some games. So also join our Discord. Our Discord link is down below, and the 500 plus members, everyone's super helpful, and we host tournaments every Friday. So how did the deck perform? So the deck actually performed insanely well. We went 16-4. I actually was insanely impressed. We climbed from Diamond 5 to Diamond 3, close to Diamond 2 with the deck. We won a good amount of our coin flips. I'd probably say like 70 or 60% of our coin flips, which were like auto wins. But I am going to say this: we won a decent amount going second too. Like we were just outgrinding our opponent. How can you make this deck more expensive and better? I think probably putting in other floodgates like Tikaboo, which if you guys aren't familiar, it's called There Can Only Be One. So if you put in floodgates like that, like this card, and or ones that like work better with the archetype, because I mean, technically all these cards are worms, so technically you could play something like Rivalry, which this will allow you to keep all your monsters on the field. But if you want to play something like super disruptive, I think There Can Only Be One usually fucks people over pretty badly. Pretty much instant win against like Dragon Link and stuff like that. The deck I will say is very good. It's surprisingly good for what it is, right? Because it's an insanely cheap deck. I will say this: going second, if your opponent is competent, I feel like is going to be very hard to win. Like if your opponent's playing Sprite and you're going second, you probably have a good chance of just leaving that match. you probably just leave the match and go to the next one. But if you're going first against Sprite, you're probably going to shit on them, because if you flip up any of these cards, you're just fucked. If you're going second against Tier Limit, yeah, I think you have an okay shot. But the main ones is like Sprite, you're probably just losing instantly. Their board's just too much for you to deal with. Plus, they have more like annoying negates. Yeah, I think the deck's pretty solid. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to actually rate this deck like... going first, this deck's like an 8.5, 9. Going second, it's probably like a 7 or a 6.5. Overall grade, I'm going to give it like a 7.5, 8. Which, I mean, is pretty damn good for how cheap the deck is. If you guys want to make this deck even cheaper, I've seen some people replace the Solemn Judgments. I've seen them replace it with an extra copy of Dyna and then anti-spell fragrance. Personally, for me, since we do play a good amount of spells, I don't like anti-spell fragrance. But I can see how it can work well with the deck, because if you do get like Ignis out, he cheats out the spells, so like they don't get like you bypass like the anti-spell fragrance effect. But it does hurt you if you're like, let's say you're in top deck mode and you get Pot of Desires in your hand, you're kind of fucking yourself with the anti-spell fragrance. Yes, you can tribute it with one of your cards, but again, you'd have to have that card to tribute it. And plus, like, it's not, anti-spell fragrance isn't as good anymore, because usually if people are playing removal, they're playing evenly match. So like, they're not many people playing lightning or harpies anymore. They're playing evenly match. So if they're playing evenly match, you're gonna get railed regardless, like if anti-spell fragrance are up. So that's part of the reason why I think Solemns, you should play Solemns, is not only can you use them for a deck later down the line for your account, but if your opponent's playing evenly matched, you have 0 outs in your deck besides Solemn. Otherwise you're gonna get cooked. But like I said, if you set up the perfect board, like you set up the Fossil Dyna with one of your knights here, and you set up like Solemn with negate, like either Monarch's Erupt. I mean, you don't even have to set up. You can set up Soul Drain or even True Draco Apocalypse. They're just cooked. They're not going to be able to play through it, because they won't. First of all, they won't be able to kill your Fossil Dyna, because the True Draco Apocalypse will just slice their attack in half. The only decks I had trouble with is I actually laughed, because I set 4. One game I set 4 and played Fossil Dyna, and my opponent played, like, the only time I ever seen it, my opponent was playing Denku. So he slammed down Denku, and I was like, okay, I just instantly lose. Because this makes it so you can't activate you can't set spells and traps, and you can't activate set spells and traps. So yeah, you're pretty screwed. So Denku would screw you over, but like I said, most people aren't playing that. Yeah, there's a lot of little tweaks you can do to the deck if you can't afford certain cards. If you're like, I really don't want to spend the SR on Soul Drain, technically replace it for something else. But I do think Soul Drain is insanely good in this meta, so personally I would just keep it. It seems very, very, very solid. Again, I know there's floodgates in the deck and you guys might get triggered by that, but I wanted to do a deck for the people who can't spend a ton of money on this game, or who are starting fresh on a new account. I think this deck is literally perfectly easy to learn the game too, if you're like a newer player, because I mean, I feel like the interactions with these cards are pretty basic, but there's still like some like higher level play to it. Well, I don't want to say higher level play, but there's still like a little more intricacies than some other decks, like compared to like Runic Stun, where you're just pretty much looking to stun lock your opponent the entire time. This has a little more intricacies with like when to use your traps, when to use like what to tribute for your True Dracos, when to pop certain things. I do think it still takes a bit more knowledge than someone who's just flipping up like 2 or 3 floodgates and then just trying to deck someone out with the runic spells. Personally, and this deck's obviously like way cheaper than that deck too. Like, compare this to all the other trap decks, this deck's like insanely cheap. And for anyone saying, oh, Labyrinth is kind of cheap, well, when Labyrinth gets its new support soon, you're not going to say that, because I guarantee you most of the new cards coming out with Labyrinth are all going to be fucking URs. So that deck's going to get expensive too, because Konami likes to make every archetype expensive. So this is like one of the only archetypes that is not expensive. So I think it's very important for the game. So hope you guys enjoyed, and goodbye.